Hello, welcome to the next in the series of review clips designed to assist you in preparation for your Biology 3201 public examination. In this clip, we'll be taking a more in-depth look at Darwin and his theories on inheritance. Evolutionary theory formed as a result of a number of observations and subsequent conclusions being drawn together. An observation that Darwin made when he was in Galapagos, but species do have a potential for rapid reproduction, and this is coupled with relatively constant resources and population size over time. Yet, we have to accept the fact that a conclusion can be drawn that there is indeed competition for survival and reproduction. Within any species, there is variability in structures and behaviors, and this led Darwin to conclude that natural selection occurs. On the average, the fittest organisms will lead the most offspring. Some of this variability is inherited, and this, in concert with previous conclusions, led Darwin to draw his evolutionary theory. That is, that the genetic makeup of the population changes over time, driven by natural selection. However, Darwin did not know about genetics. Evolutionary biology and genetics came together many years later. We now know population genetics to be the guiding theme for evolution of species formation. We define a population as being a group of individuals of the same species living in the same area at the same time, and thus tending to breed with each other. On this planet, there is a tremendous amount of genetic diversity, and the question has arisen, how do these different species arise? The answer is through evolution and speciation events. Understand that Darwin did not know the mechanism of heredity. Thus, in 1987 wrote, "Evolution by common descent had become established as undeniable fact within decades of the publication of The Origin of Species. Yet, the original theory lacked any mechanism by which variation might be inherited." There are two possible, yet unsupported, mechanisms of inheritance. One of these is blending, that traits of parents are blended together in offspring, and there's also the concept, LAMARKIAN, that there is inheritance of acquired traits. We can't think of it blending inheritance as being, for example, taking a plant species with white flowers and a single red mutant. Blending, if that was indeed what was occurred, would cause loss of the red, well, over generation. It would be diluted with the white. Jenkins in 1867 made this point. We know that Lamarckian evolution is not supported. August Weismann, who lived from 1834 to 1914, did an actual experiment on this, where he took mice and cut the tails off of 22 generations of them. 1,592 mice in total. And what he showed was that all the new generations had normal tails. Well, until it was cut off. So from Weismann, he left a legacy. Unless hereditary material is halved, it would double in every generation, of course, in species that reproduce sexually. He came up with the idea of germ-plasm theory. His theory proposes that an organism is divided into two parts, the soma, the body, and what happens to it is not passed on. We now know that is the somatic cell. And there's also the germline, and this is tissue that produces the gametes. We now know that mutation to the germline is passed on to future generations. So if you look at Darwinian selection in the light of this knowledge, we know that all natural selection will result in evolution, but not all evolution is the product of natural selection. Evolution, by definition, is the change in allele frequencies, or traits, over time. Natural selection is the differential reproductive success that results from adaptation. And an adaptation is an allele or trait which provides superior reproductive success to an individual possessing it relative to an individual with a different allele or trait. So over time, theories of evolution developed. Both Darwin and Wallace put forward identical theories. They proposed that species are related to one another and they change over time. Thus, species existing today have descended, with modifications, from other pre-existing species. Natural selection acts on individuals. Individuals with certain favorable characteristics will produce more offspring. This gave rise to the modern synthesis. Remember, Darwin did not have any idea about genetics and how trait transmission occurred. The modern synthesis arose from this. And the modern synthesis combines genetics, geology, and natural selection together. We know that gradual evolution results from small genetic changes that are acted upon by natural selection. Speciation and macroevolution can be explained by microevolution, given, of course, the age of the Earth. So if we take Darwin's ideas and simply restate them, take into account new knowledge, mutation is the ultimate source of all variation. Segregation and independent assortment create novel combinations of alleles. These alleles are in turn passed between generations. More offspring are produced than can possibly survive. And those individuals that possess the most advantageous allelic combination for the current situation produce more offspring. Now, if we look at blending, offspring are long thought to be blends or averages of traits of the parents. Yet, if this was indeed true, all variation would very quickly disappear. Darwin observed this, but he never fully resolved the problem. The answer comes from Mendel's particulate traits. Traits don't blend, but are rather inherited as units. Again, this was knowledge that Darwin did not possess. Traits from either one or the other parent are in turn passed on. So there are four forces that drive and guide evolution. 1, mutation. 2, gene flow or migration. 3, genetic drift. And of course, natural selection. From a genetic perspective, a modern genetic perspective, evolution is a change in the frequency of alleles from generation to the next. We define a population as being a community of individuals where mates are usually found. Microevolution, small changes in frequencies, whereas macroevolution, large-scale change, occurs over many generations. So again, the four forces of evolution: mutation, which is simply a change in the DNA sequence; gene flow or migration, which is the exchange of genes between populations; genetic drift, where the allele frequency changes and occur at random; and of course, natural selection, which is the process that produces adaptations and provides directional allele frequency changes relative to specific environmental factors. Remember, selection, natural selection, acts on individuals. Populations evolve, not the individuals. So how do these populations evolve? The critical component of biological evolution is that there is a genetic basis to the traits and characters that change through time. We know this through his work on genetic inheritance and subsequent population genetics. Darwin's book, The Origin of Species, convinced biologists that species are the product of evolution. Yet, natural selection was not as well received. The problem came in to understand how is it that traits are inherited. Unfortunately, Darwin was unaware of Mendel's work on genetic inheritance. So, what happened to reconcile this? Work on population genetics in the 1930s and 40s solved the inheritance problem, and the genetic basis on natural selection was worked out. As a result, traits were shown to have a genetic basis, and this genetic basis was heritable. As a result, the modern synthesis was created. Now, the modern synthesis emphasized the following points. 1. Populations are indeed the unit of evolution. 2. Natural selection is the most important mechanism of evolution. And 3. Gradualism, that is, small changes accumulating over long periods of time, can result in large changes. So, we can restate it all. The modern theory of evolution, modern synthesis, commonly accepted today, contains the following tenets. 1. It is a meshing of Mendel's and Darwin's ideas. 2. Darwin says that variations exist in populations, allowing certain organisms to adapt to their environment. These traits can then be passed on to offspring. Mendel, as you recall, points out that mutation is the cause of variations within a population, and it is the DNA that helps carry these best traits onto the next generation. A sample question on this material reads as follows. Which scientist would most likely support the following statement? Some bacteria are resistant to antibacterial soaps, resulting in some surviving the initial application. As you recall, Cuvier dealt with fossils. Lamarck adhered to inheritance acquired characteristics. Lyell, catastrophism. The correct answer to this is indeed B, Darwin. Another question drawn from this exam material is a constructor response one. This one reads, explain using evolutionary theory why the scientific community is concerned with the increasing use of pesticides, worth 2%. The answer key for this, as provided, was that 1 mark was given for stating natural selection will result in creating a population of pests that are immune to the pesticide. Another mark was given for stating that eventually the pesticides will become ineffective.